Joining me to discuss why the Israeli government has long sought a war with Iran and what it hopes to achieve is the Israeli journalist Gideon Levy. Gideon writes a column for the Israeli newspaper Haaretz that often focuses on the Israeli occupation of the Palestinian territories. Let's go back. You know Netanyahu. This has been a 4-decade-long project. Why has Netanyahu been so intent upon it? What do you think he hopes to achieve by having drawn the United States and Israel into this war?
So first, thank you, Chris, for having me again. It is very hard to find one answer to all the very good questions you raised, because we can't get into politicians' and statesmen's minds. What motivates him? I think that it's a combination. First of all, we have to look at the mindset of Israelis and the mindset of Netanyahu, which in many ways reflects the Israeli mindset. Namely, always to look for an enemy, always to feel persecuted, always to victimize, always to feel we are the David and there is some Goliath who is going to exterminate us and to push us to the ocean. Iran paid its share because Iran, ever since this regime is in power, didn't stop threatening Israel, only in words, but in very tough words. I mean, there is the big Satan and the small Satan. They kept on saying it day and night, and that's a good excuse or justification, if you want, to perceive Iran as a danger. The question is, was it or is it a real existential danger, even if a nuclear Iran is an existential danger? That's an open question. Now, why did he go to this war? It's a combination. You know, many look for the answer in his personal ambitions and personal world. Namely, he's facing charges in court, he's facing elections, he wants to live his heritage in history, and he failed until now. This was for him a claim to fame. But I would give him more credit than this, and I think that he really believed that Iran is an existential danger to Israel, and the only problem is that in his world, and in most of the Israelis' world, the only answer for a danger is the military answer. There is no other answer. It's beyond the scope. It's beyond any place even to take it into account. War is always the first option, not the last one in Israel. And you saw it in Gaza, and you see it now. And last sentence, 2.5 years, we conducted one of the ugliest wars in Gaza. What did Israel achieve there? The goals were very similar. Regime change, the fighting against a demon. Is Israel more secure now? Did Israel achieve its goals in Gaza? As I think that we didn't, why not to draw a lesson for this? Isn't it enough? I mean, Gaza is not Iran. Hamas is not the regime in Iran. This is a total different scale. We failed with Hamas. So why do we think we will succeed there? But for Netanyahu, it's a different mindset.
Let me ask about Iran. So the reports, certainly in the American press, is that there is a divergence between the Trump administration and Netanyahu. Trump is mercurial and changes his mind by the minute, of course, but that it appears that he would like an exit. He'd like a way out. This is not going well for the global economy or for the U.S., frankly, or probably even for Israel, but that the assumption is that the Netanyahu government would like to, they can't do to Iran what they've done to Gaza or what they're doing to southern Lebanon because it's too big. It's the size of Western Europe, but they can obliterate its infrastructure and its, much of its urban areas to create a kind of failed state, as I mentioned in the introduction. Is that the goal? Do you think that is the Israeli goal?
I think the Israeli goal is about Iran is quite irrelevant now because whatever Donald Trump will decide, Israel will have to follow. Israel, in this stage, Israel has no other choice and no other capability. Even from the military narrow perspective, Israel does not have the capability to conduct a war over Iran without the American Air Force and the American Army. It's just impossible, even when it comes to something simple like, or not simple, like fueling the jets. We need America. We need America for political support, diplomatic support, economical support, military support, supply, arming, everything. Israel cannot go on with this war in Iran, and I don't think that even Netanyahu will even try. Once Donald Trump, you see already when Trump said what he said 1 day ago about the possibility of ending the war very soon, Netanyahu kept silent. He didn't say a word. And if he said something, it was almost supportive. He knows he has no other choice. What is more problematic is continuing the war in Lebanon, because I guess that Donald Trump couldn't care less about Lebanon, and he might let Israel continue in Lebanon. And that's my worry now. But as about the war in Iran, it all depends on Donald Trump.
But Hezbollah doesn't have the ability to inflict the damage on Israel that Iran has.
This is true, but they can continue as a war of attrition. And Israel can, again, and started already to occupy more and more pieces of Lebanon and to destruct parts of Beirut. We have been in this scenario so many times. Never did Israel gain anything out of it. Here it really repeats itself, detail after detail, identical. Again and again, and never learn, and always think that now it's the time, and this time it will be once and for all, and the only once and for all, as I wrote once, sorry for quoting myself, the only once and for all is the Israeli occupation. That's the only thing which is once and for all.
Well, we should be clear that Israel occupied Lebanon from 1982 to 2000.
18 years, sure. 18 years, and we went out and nothing was solved, not only for once and for all, even not for a few years. And then
it was even worse, Gideon, because it created Hezbollah. That's how Hezbollah was created.
Exactly. And Hamas was also partly created by Israel. I mean, it's always this idea that we can change regimes, and it always ends up with a worse regime. It's always about the assassinations, when we are sure that if we will just assassinate 12 leaders or 20 leaders, the problem will be solved. And it's always lead us to worse successors.
That when I first got to Israel in 1988, there was a war against Faisal Husseini. I mean, imagine this Palestinian aristocrat. And then, of course, Fatah and Arafat. And then taking out, I knew Abdelaziz Rantisi, you may have known him as well, taking out these scholars. Rantisi was brilliant, whatever you think of his ideology, and Sheikh Yassin, these were the co-founders of Hamas, and you end up with Yahya Sinwar. So I think this is the point, that the history has shown that these targeted assassinations, I knew Nizar Rayan as well, they don't result in more moderation. They spawn people who are more and more fanatical.
I don't get into the moral and legal question of the assassinations, even though it's very hard to ignore it. Because by the end of the day, those are murders. And though this is a behavior of a crime family, and the media collaborates with it, obviously. But let's put it aside. What is the utility of it? What does come out of it? And the amazing thing is that it repeats itself systematically, and no lesson is drawn. Again and again, no, this time it will succeed. And it fails, and we'll try again. Like a gambler in a casino who is sure that the next time it will go better, and it doesn't.
Well, eventually gamblers go bankrupt, usually. At what point does Israel pay an existential price for this kind of behavior?
I think the real danger right now, and any friend of Israel or anyone who cares about Israel should concentrate now on what's going on in your country, in the United States. Because in very few years' time, we will face a different United States when it comes to Israel. And it will be dramatic. And I think all kinds of voices who were not legitimate in the United States until recently are becoming louder and louder. And all kinds of questions are being raised about the taxpayers' money, about the reason for all this, about the fact that not always is it clear who is the superpower Israel or the United States. All kinds of questions come up now in both parties. This is so interesting. It's not only in one party, in both parties. And as I thought that Biden was the last Zionist president, I think in many ways Trump will be the last president who will take into account Israel. I think the next ones, whoever it will be, for them Israel will be in a much lower priority. And then Israel really faces a challenge which it never did. Because Europe is boiling against Israel, but they don't dare to do anything because of the fear of the American administration. And the rest of the world, obviously, in the rest of the world, Israel is already a pariah state. And without the United States, Israel will face a situation which it never faced before, which might be an existential threat, in my view, more than the Iranian nuclear bomb.
Let me ask about the consequences of the war on Iran, in particular the targeted assassinations carried out against the Iranian leadership. What do you expect to come from this? One has to assume that there would be a pretty concerted effort on the part of the Iranians at payback.
Yes, and they have many motivations to do so. The question is only their capability. If this regime will continue, I have no doubt that they will make many more efforts now to get nuclear weapons, because once they will have the bomb, this war and many other wars will not take place. Nobody dares to attack North Korea. Nobody dares to attack Pakistan. Nobody will dare to attack Israel or Iran, if Iran has, that's obvious, yeah.
I just want to interject to say that, in the Middle East, it was the lesson of Muammar Gaddafi, who gave up his nuclear program to appease the West, and look what happened to him.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Nelson Mandela also gave up some capabilities, and rightly so. But in Israel, nobody thinks about it, obviously. But you asked about the assassinations, and here I must tell you that it follows a long policy of assassinating as a strategy. It didn't start in Iran. It starts with the Palestinians in the 70s.
Yeah.
We murdered any possible political leader, not only military leaders. People like Hassan Kanafani, who was a poet. Yeah. We murdered him in Beirut in 72. What danger is from a poet? Not to speak about any alternative leaderships, Abu Jihad, Abu Iyad, you name them. We tried to kill anyone. Arafat got some kind of impurity, and he survived. And even about his end, we don't know everything. But this is a strategy of Israel. And Israel is very proud about it. I remember, you are young, so you don't remember it, but I remember that Bulgaria used to send all kinds of secret agents in Europe who would poison all kinds of regime resistance with umbrellas, poisoned umbrellas in the streets. It was the whole thing. I guess Bulgaria never was proud of it. Israel is so proud, for example, on the operation, the Beeper operation. Yeah,
this is what decapitated Hezbollah. Or, well, I don't know if it decapitated it, but it's certainly, and they killed Nasrallah as well, but you're referring to these pagers that, I don't know, what is it? It was hundreds of people, right? Were affected
hundreds
by these
of people lost
pagers.
Their organs. Not hundreds of people were killed, but hundreds of people lost their hands, their legs, God knows.
Yeah.
Hundreds. In Israel, it's a source of pride. And as an Israeli who cares about Israel, it makes me worry because this is not a healthy atmosphere to live in.
How do you see, it's very dangerous to predict anything given the mercurial nature of the Trump administration, but where do you see the conflict going? The Iranians have twice negotiated in the 12-day war last June. Their negotiating teams have been assassinated. The moderates have been assassinated. I think the message has been delivered clearly to the Iranians that there are no exits. That they at this point must inflict as much pain as possible. Many people argue that it doesn't really matter what Trump or Netanyahu want the Iranians are going to make their adversaries pay, and of course asymmetrically through crippling the regional and the global economy. Where do you see it going?
So first of all, it depends much on the capabilities of the Iranians, not only on their ambitions. Sure, Iran will want to take revenge, and how? But the question is if they will have the capability, because still they are beaten now. It's not something that they will recover within a few weeks or months to their same power. And the question is, for the long run, first of all, they will have to make their choice if they want to continue with the same regime, with the same policy. I'm not sure this regime is so good for Iran. I'm not sure.
No.
And therefore, it's really about them to decide. Because between liberal democracy and this fundamentalistic regime, there is a large scope. And they can change also, gradually, not only in a revolution of one day, become Norway or Denmark. They can also go gradually. And it depends much on them now. We are still facing a good chance that a war like we face now will repeat itself in 1-2 years again. And as it seems now, this is the most probable scenario. And this will not make people think, why do we do those wars if it leads us to repeat them again and again? Why not to try something else? Why not to give diplomacy a chance? But, you can whistle in the darkness, not much more than this. Same with the Palestinians. I believe that any of those conflicts could have been solved by diplomacy. Finally, we are dealing with human beings. In our side, in the other side, everything could have been solved in diplomacy. I don't believe that war is inevitable. I really don't believe so. I know I sound maybe disconnected from reality. But I know one thing, we never really tried.
But do you see that kind of a change? I mean, Israel seems to become more messianic by the minute. The settlers have seized control in a way that was not true when I was in Israel, within the military, within, of course, the government, within the secret services. The settlers were always pariahs. One sees Israel not drifting towards a government that would embrace diplomacy, but becoming more and more fanatic.
Absolutely, and therefore I'm so skeptical and pessimistic. I can't see any scenario in which Israel changes its policy, because the problem is that it's not about the leadership. It's not now about the people. And the majority of Israelis support wars, support apartheid, support occupation, and don't want to see any change, and don't believe in any change. So it's far beyond who is going to replace Netanyahu. We have a problem with a people who reach the point in which it's becoming more militaristic than ever, more religious than ever, more messianic than ever. And those processes are very hard to stop.
Are those processes suicidal for Israel?
I don't want to sound too dramatic. I mean, suicidal. I'd never thought that the question if Israel will exist was ever a relevant question. The only question is what kind of Israel? And Israel can turn into a place that neither you nor me will want to have anything with it. Israel will exist. It is strong, and I guess that any American administration will still not lose totally Israel, even though I'm sure the support will be decreasing dramatically, as I said. But the question is, what for? I mean, if we turn into, there are still wonderful islands in Israel, Chris. Wonderful people, which really, I can just be amazed how they all still stay here, even though some are leaving. But they are really wonderful islands. They are a minority, and they are delegitimized, unfortunately. And the tendency is a very negative one, demographically and politically and socially. You see how things are getting worse and worse and worse. The settlers take over, the Orthodox take over, the army that I was fighting against decades ago is much a worse army now. with all the settlers in all kind of high positions. And the government is a real fascist government. You can't find any other word.